The morning sun rose over New Jeju like it did every other day. Golden light spread across endless fields of wheat that swayed in the gentle breeze. In the distance, orchards heavy with fruit stretched toward the horizon. Everything looked peaceful. Everything looked normal. Taeyang Kim stood on the observation deck of the main administrative building, a simple structure that rose 3 stories above the farmland. He held a cup of coffee in one hand and a data pad in the other. His face showed no concern as he read the latest reports. At 45 years old, with graying hair and a calm demeanor, he looked exactly like what he claimed to be, a colony administrator managing a farming settlement. Another shipment ready for transport, Yuna Park said as she entered the deck. She was younger than Taeyang, barely 35, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She carried a clipboard filled with harvest reports. The freighter from Epsilon Station will arrive in 6 hours. Good, Taeyang replied without looking up. The usual grain and vegetables? Plus the new batch of medical herbs, Yuna added. The ones that grow in the southern fields. They're quite popular in the core systems, Taeyang nodded. New Jeju had been sending agricultural products to nearby systems for almost 8 years now. The colony had built a reputation for quality crops and reliable delivery. Nobody paid much attention to them beyond placing orders and paying credits. That was exactly how it should be. Down below, workers moved through the fields. Some drove automated harvesters. Others checked irrigation systems. A few inspected the tall structures that everyone called grain silos. Life on New Jeju followed a simple rhythm. Plant, grow, harvest, ship, repeat. Hanul Lee appeared in the doorway. He was the colony's security chief, a quiet man who rarely spoke unless necessary. Morning inspection complete, he reported. All sectors clear. Any unusual activity? Taeyang asked. Nothing. The perimeter is quiet. This was their daily routine. The same questions. The same answers. To anyone watching, it would seem boring, predictable, safe. Jiwon Choi burst onto the deck, breaking the calm morning atmosphere. She was the youngest of the senior staff, only 26, and served as their communications officer. Her face showed excitement mixed with worry. Administrator. She caught herself quickly. We have incoming messages from the Galactic Council. Multiple channels. Priority flags. Taeyang finally looked up from his datapad. What kind of messages? War updates, Jiwon said, pulling up a holographic display. The Vrexian Empire and the Tellurian Confederacy. Their fleets are moving toward this sector. The room fell silent. Yuna stopped writing on her clipboard. Hanul stepped closer to examine the display. Taeyang set down his coffee cup carefully. The war between the Vrexians and Tellurians had been raging for 17 years. It had consumed entire star systems. Billions had died. Planets had been reduced to ash. The Galactic Council had tried everything to stop it. Negotiations, sanctions, peacekeeping forces. Nothing worked. The two empires hated each other too much, but the war had always been far away from New Jeju. The colony existed in neutral space, far from strategic jump points or resource-rich systems. They had nothing either empire wanted, or so everyone believed. How close are the fleets? Taeyang asked calmly. 3 days out, Jiwon replied. Maybe 4. They're converging on coordinates just beyond our system. They're going to fight near us, Yuna said quietly. Hanul crossed his arms. The council is panicking. They think we'll be caught in the crossfire. Taeyang walked to the window and looked out over the fields. Farmers continued their work below, unaware of the conversation happening above them. The wheat still swayed. The sun still shone. Everything still looked peaceful. Send a response to the council, Taeyang said. Tell them we appreciate their concern. Assure them that New Jeju will take appropriate precautions. Should we evacuate? Jiwon asked. No. The single word hung in the air. Jiwon looked confused. Even Yuna seemed surprised. Sir, Jiwon began carefully, 2 of the largest war fleets in the galaxy are about to fight right next door. Shouldn't we? We should continue normal operations, Taeyang interrupted gently. Trust me, Jiwon. New Jeju will be fine. Hanul showed the faintest hint of a smile. Yuna returned to her clipboard, but now her movement seemed more purposeful. Jiwon looked between the 3 of them, clearly not understanding something important. I'll send the message, she said slowly, then left the deck. Once she was gone, Taeyang turned to Yuna and Hanul. His calm expression remained, but something in his eyes had changed. They were sharper now, More alert. How long until we can activate the full systems? He asked. All primary systems can be online in 12 hours, Hanul replied. Secondary systems in 24. The harvest protocols? Taeyang looked at Yuna. Ready when you are, she confirmed. Every station has been running drills. The teams know their positions. Good. Taeyang picked up his coffee cup again. Let's give it another day. I want to see what these fleets do. Maybe they'll be smart and avoid each other. And if they're not smart? Hanul asked. Then we'll have to educate them. Yuna smiled at that. The irrigation network has been at full capacity for weeks. Soman says the power grid can handle sustained operations for months if needed. Excellent. Taeyang checked his datapad again. What about the orbital assets? Minho reports all satellites are functioning normally, Hanul said. To outside observers, they're just weather monitors and communications relays. Perfect. Taeyang drained his coffee. Let's keep it that way for now. The three of them stood in comfortable silence looking out over New Jeju. From this height, the colony looked exactly like what it claimed to be. A simple farming settlement. Fields of crops, orchards, livestock pens, a few scattered buildings, some roads connecting different sectors. Nothing threatening. Nothing military. But if someone knew where to look, they might notice strange details. The grain silos were too perfectly spaced. The irrigation pipes seemed too thick for just water. The farmers moved with unusual discipline. The tractors had reinforced frames. The satellites in orbit had suspicious power signatures. New Jeju had been hiding in plain sight for 8 years. The Galactic Council had assessed the colony when humans first established it. Their report had been clear. Priority level minimal. Agricultural output only. No strategic value. That report sat in files across 1,000 worlds. Everyone who looked at New Jeju saw what they expected to see. Simple humans growing simple crops on a simple world. Nobody had looked deeper. Nobody had asked why an agricultural colony needed such advanced communication systems. Nobody wondered why farmers needed security chief. Nobody questioned why the colony administrator was a former military logistics officer with 3 decades of service. Should we tell the others? Yuna asked. Tell them to be ready, Taeyang said. But keep normal operations going. I want both fleets to see a peaceful farming colony when they arrive. Let them ignore us. Let them focus on each other. And then? Hanul asked. And then, Taeyang smiled. We'll show them what happens when you bring war to a human colony. Down in the fields, a worker drove his harvester along neat rows of wheat. Above him, what looked like a weather satellite adjusted its position slightly. In the distance, a grain silo's door remained closed, hiding what lay beneath. New Jeju continued its peaceful routine, waiting for the storm that was coming. The Vrexian fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of angry insects. 847 warships materialized in the darkness of space, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight. Each ship bristled with weapons. Their engines glowed with barely contained power. On the bridge of the flagship Deathclaw, Commander Veltha studied the tactical display. He was a Vrexian warrior in his prime, with scales the color of dried blood and eyes like burning coals. He had fought in this war for 12 years. He had destroyed 14 Tellurian colonies. Today he would end this conflict once and for all. Report, he commanded. Long-range sensors detect the Tellurian fleet approaching from the opposite vector, his tactical officer announced. 923 ships. They'll reach engagement range in 4 hours. Veltha showed his teeth in what his species considered a smile. Excellent. Today we crush them completely. Commander, there's a planet in this system, another officer reported. New Jeju. Records show it's a human agricultural colony. Humans? Velthas waved a clawed hand dismissively. Ignore them. They're no threat. The officer hesitated. Should we warn them? They're directly between our fleet and the Tellurians. They chose to farm in a war zone. Not our problem. Velthas returned his attention to the tactical display. All ships begin forming attack pattern Crimson Death. On the other side of the system, the Tellurian fleet arrived with equal menace. Their ships were sleeker than the Vrexian vessels, designed for speed and precision strikes. Admiral Koros commanded from the bridge of the Stellar Fury, his tentacles manipulating multiple control surfaces simultaneously. The Vrexians are here, his sensor officer reported. 847 vessels. They're positioning for a direct assault. They always were predictable, Koros said, his translator rendering his language into standard galactic. Deploy defensive screen formation. Prepare antimatter torpedoes. Admiral, sensors detect a human colony on the third planet. New Jeju, humans. Koros's tentacles rippled in the Tellurian equivalent of a shrug. Farmers. They're irrelevant. Focus on the Vrexians. On New Jeju's surface, the Situation Room had transformed. What had looked like a simple agricultural warehouse now revealed its true purpose. Holographic displays covered the walls showing both approaching fleets in perfect detail. Personnel sat at sophisticated control stations, their fingers moving across keyboards and touchscreens. Minho Kang stood at the center of it all. He was the colony's planetary defense coordinator, though his official title was Livestock Manager. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Both fleets are powering weapons, he reported to Taiyang. Estimated time to engagement, 3 hours, 47 minutes. Taiyang had shed his casual farmer appearance. He now wore a black uniform with subtle insignia, marking him as a commander in Earth's strategic defense force. Around him, the senior staff had similarly transformed. Yuna wore the uniform of a military biochemist. Hunnel had tactical armor. Even young Jiwon had traded her casual clothes for an officer's uniform. Are they hailing us? Taeyang asked. Negative, Jiwon said from her communication station. We're receiving automated warnings from both fleets telling us to stay out of their way. That's it. They don't even consider us worth talking to, Yuna observed. Good. Taeyang studied the display showing both massive fleets. Let them think we're helpless farmers. Hanul, status of our assets? Surface installations are at full readiness, Hanul reported. All systems online but in passive mode. To their sensors, we still look like an agricultural colony. Orbital assets? All 48 satellites have repositioned, Minho added. Still broadcasting as weather monitors and communication relays. Both fleets scanned us and dismissed us as non-threatening. Taeyang allowed himself a small smile. Somin, how's the power grid? Somin Ryu looked up from her engineering station. She had been the colony's irrigation specialist until today. The primary reactor is at 100%. All distribution nodes are active. We can sustain maximum output for 72 hours before needing to cycle down for maintenance. Let's hope we don't need that long. Taeyang turned to the main display. Show me their weapons. The hologram shifted, highlighting the armaments on both fleets. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, energy shields, antimatter torpedoes. Both sides had enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. If they fight here, the collateral damage will be catastrophic, Yuna said quietly. Even if they ignore us, the debris and radiation will make this system uninhabitable. They don't care, Hanul said flatly. They've destroyed dozens of systems already. What's one more? Jiwon's console beeped urgently. Message from the Galactic Council. They're begging both fleets to stand down. They're offering to mediate. Will either side accept? Yuna asked. The Vrexians just sent their response, Jiwon said, her face going pale. They told the council to, well, the translation isn't polite. The Tellurians? Similar response. Neither fleet is backing down. Taeyang made his decision. Contact Earth Command. Secure channel. Tell them we have 2 hostile fleets preparing to engage within our defensive perimeter. Request authorization to implement Protocol Guardian. The room went silent. Protocol Guardian was the authorization they'd been waiting 8 years to receive. It meant Earth was giving them permission to stop hiding. Jiwon's hands trembled slightly as she sent the encrypted message. The response came back in less than 30 seconds. That alone told them how serious Earth considered the situation. Messages from Earth usually took hours. Authorization granted, Jiwon read. Full operational authority. Protect the sector. Additional note. Show them what we're capable of. Taeyang nodded slowly. Begin transformation sequence. I want all personnel at combat stations in 30 minutes. Civilians to the shelters. What about the facade? Minho asked. Once we start, both fleets will know we're not just farmers. Let them know. Taeyang's voice was cold. Maybe it'll make them think twice about bringing war to human space. Across the colony, transformation began. What had looked like peaceful farmland started to change. Massive sections of crops retracted into the ground on hydraulic platforms. Beneath them, launch tubes rose into position. Missile silos, railgun emplacements, energy weapon arrays. The grain silos split open vertically, revealing advanced targeting systems inside. The irrigation network, actually a planet-wide power distribution system, began channeling massive amounts of energy to strategic points across the colony. In orbit, the 48 weather satellites reconfigured themselves. Their solar panels folded back, revealing weapon systems. Their communication dishes rotated to track both incoming fleets. Their passive sensors switched to active military-grade scanning. The barn-like structures across the colony opened their massive doors. Inside weren't tractors or livestock. Fighter craft sat on launch rails, their pilots already climbing aboard. These weren't civilian vessels. They were military interceptors, sleek and deadly. Transformation complete, Hanul reported. All weapon systems online. All personnel at stations. Defense grid is active. Both fleets have detected our energy signatures, Minho said. They're scanning us now. On the Deathclaw's bridge, alarms suddenly blared. Commander, the tactical officer shouted. The colony. It's not a colony. Veltha stared at the display in confusion. Where there had been farmland, there were now weapon emplacements. Lots of them. What is this? Reading massive power signatures from the surface. Multiple launch facilities, orbital weapons platforms. Commander, that's a military installation. On the Stellar Fury, Admiral Koros experienced similar shock. Impossible. Our intelligence showed an agricultural settlement. It was a disguise, Admiral, his officer reported. Sensors now detect advanced weapon systems. Energy output suggests they could threaten both our fleets. Humans? Koros's tentacles writhed in agitation. Simple farmers? Both fleets received the same message simultaneously. Taeyang's voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. This is Commander Taeyang Kim of New Jeju Defense Command. You are in violation of neutral space. You have brought war to a human colony. You have 10 seconds to power down all weapons and retreat beyond the system boundary. This is your only warning. On both flagships, the commanders looked at each other through communication channels, then laughed. A human colony threatening us? Veltha scoffed. Ignore them, Koros ordered. Continue engagement preparations. In New Jeju's command center, Taeyang watched the timer count down. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They're not backing down, Minho reported. Taeyang's expression didn't change. Then we teach them why you don't ignore humans. He pressed a single button. Engage. The first shots of what should have been the largest battle in 17 years fired exactly as both fleets planned. Vrexian plasma cannons lit up the darkness. Tellurian missiles streaked toward their targets. Both sides had positioned for maximum damage. Both expected to win. Neither expected what happened next. At exactly 3 minutes into their engagement, every ship in both fleets went dark. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapons powered down. Their shields collapsed. 847 Vrexian warships and 923 Tellurian vessels became nothing more than floating metal coffins. In the command center of New Jeju, Yunbi Jiang smiled at her console. She was the colony's electronic warfare specialist. Though until today, everyone knew her as the woman who managed the colony's communication systems. Electromagnetic pulse successful, she reported. 40% of both fleets disabled. Primary systems offline. Backup power will take them approximately 4 minutes to restore. 4 minutes, Taeyang repeated. That's all the time we need. Daehyun, you're up. Daehyun Song stood at the weapons control station. His official title had been Equipment Maintenance Supervisor. His real job was far more interesting. Railgun batteries locked on targets. Firing solutions calculated. Beginning precision strikes. Across New Jeju's surface, what had appeared to be grain silos completed their transformation. Massive electromagnetic railguns emerged from underground bunkers, their barrels pointed at the sky. These weren't the crude railguns that other species used. These were human-designed weapons, capable of firing projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed with pinpoint accuracy. The railguns fired. No explosions, no bright energy beams, just solid metal slugs accelerated to impossible speeds. They crossed the distance to the fleets in seconds. Each round had been carefully targeted by the defense grid's targeting computers that had been tracking both fleets since they entered the system. The First round struck the Deathclaw's primary weapons array. Metal met metal at relativistic speeds. The impact didn't destroy the ship, but it tore through the weapon systems like paper. Secondary strikes hit the ship's secondary batteries. More rounds disabled the missile tubes. Across the Vrexian fleet, the same thing happened. Capital ships lost their main guns. Cruisers found their torpedo launchers smashed. Destroyers had their energy weapons reduced to twisted metal. Not one ship was destroyed. Not one crew member was killed. But every major weapon system in the fleet was now scrap metal. The Tellurian fleet fared no better. Their sleek ships proved just as vulnerable to kinetic strikes. Admiral Koros watched in horror as his fleet's weapons were methodically dismantled. "How?" he whispered. "How are they hitting us with such precision?" "The orbital satellites," his tactical officer said, stunned. "They're not weather monitors. They're targeting platforms. They've been tracking us since we arrived. All ships, evasive maneuvers," Koros ordered. "Get us out of their firing range." But before the Tellurian ships could move, Hanul initiated the next phase. Launching fighter wings. Across New Jeju's surface, the massive barn doors opened completely. Fighter craft shot into the sky on pillars of blue flame. These weren't the bulky military fighters that other species used. Human fighters were compact, fast, and terrifyingly agile. Siwoo Han led the first squadron into space. He had been a fighter pilot for 15 years before retiring to New Jeju. Now he was back in his element. "Gold Squadron, form up. Silver Squadron, take the left flank. We're going to show them how humans fly." The human fighters moved through space like nothing the aliens had ever seen. They accelerated faster. They turned sharper. They seemed to predict enemy movements before they happened. Within minutes, they had established complete control of the battlefield. "They're everywhere." A Vrexian pilot screamed into his radio before his fighter systems were disabled by a precisely placed electromagnetic burst. The human fighters didn't destroy enemy ships. They disabled them. Engines were targeted with surgical precision. Communication arrays were fried. Weapon systems were neutralized. It was like watching a master surgeon at work, cutting away threats without causing fatal damage. Back in the command center, Hyejin Nam coordinated the assault. She was the tactical operations officer, and she ran the battle like a chess master. "Squadron 3, target the Vrexian carrier group. Squadron 7, intercept those Tellurian destroyers trying to flank. Keep them contained, but don't kill them." "Orbital platforms charging," Minho reported. "Ready to deploy missile systems." The platforms that had masqueraded as satellites now revealed their full capability. Missile tubes deployed from their sides. But these weren't conventional missiles. These were smart weapons with individual targeting systems and adaptive programming. "Launch," Taeyang ordered. Hundreds of missiles streaked from the orbital platforms. They moved in coordinated patterns, adjusting their trajectories in real time. Each missile knew exactly where to hit to disable but not destroy. They struck propulsion systems. They hit power generators. They disabled navigation arrays. Commander Velthas pounded his fist on his command console as another wave of missiles struck his fleet. "Return fire. Destroy that planet." "We can't, Commander," his weapons officer said desperately. "All primary weapons are offline. Secondary weapons are destroyed. We're defenseless." "Impossible. They're just humans. They're farmers." "They're soldiers," the officer corrected quietly. They were always soldiers. 6 minutes had passed since the battle began. Both fleets were now completely helpless. Half their ships couldn't move. The other half couldn't fight. Human fighters patrolled the battlefield like wolves among sheep. The orbital platforms maintained targeting locks on every vessel. The railguns on the surface remained ready to fire again, and then Daehyun activated the final deterrent. "Directed energy weapons online," he announced. "Target locked on the uninhabited moon. Firing." The weapon that emerged from underground was unlike anything in the known galaxy. It was an experimental system that Earth had been developing for decades, a directed energy weapon that could focus enough power to cut through solid matter at the atomic level. The beam lanced out from New Jeju's surface. It crossed millions of kilometers in an instant. It struck the small lifeless moon that orbited the system's gas giant. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the moon split in half. The two pieces drifted apart slowly, the cut surface smooth as glass. The beam had sliced through hundreds of kilometers of rock and metal like it was butter. Both fleet commanders watched in stunned silence. That moon had been solid iron and stone, One shot from the human weapon had cut it perfectly in two. That was a warning shot. Taeyang's voice came over all communication channels. His tone was calm, almost conversational. We aimed at an uninhabited moon. We could have aimed at your flagships. We could have aimed at any of your ships. We chose not to. On the Deathclaw, Veltha stared at the split moon. His scales had gone pale. They could have killed us all. The next shot won't be a warning, Taeyang continued. You brought war to human space. You ignored our warning. You thought we were helpless farmers? You were wrong. 9 minutes had passed since the engagement began. Both fleets were completely neutralized. Not destroyed. Not annihilated. Simply rendered completely helpless. This is what restraint looks like, Taeyang said. Every one of your crew members is alive. Your ships can be repaired. We could have ended this battle very differently. We chose not to because humans don't want war. We never did. Admiral Koros felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Fear. What do you want from us? End your war, Taeyang replied simply. Both of you, today, or next time we won't show restraint. Next time we'll end your war for you, permanently. Silence filled the communication channels. Both commanders looked at their disabled fleets. They looked at the split moon. They looked at the planet that had seemed so harmless just hours ago. You've been watching us, Veltha said slowly. All this time. For 8 years, Taeyang confirmed. We've tracked every battle. We've recorded every tactic. We've studied every weapon system you use. We know everything about both your empires. Fleet positions, supply lines, defensive capabilities, everything. The agricultural shipments, Koros realized. They contained sensors. Among other things, Taeyang said. You never inspected them closely. Why would you? They were just crops from a farming colony. Hyejin pulled up data on the main screen. We have complete intelligence on both empires. Military installations, government centers, population hubs. If Earth Command gives the order, we could neutralize both your civilizations within 72 hours. This is blackmail, Veltha growled. This is reality, Taeyang corrected. You've been fighting for 17 years. Billions have died. Dozens of worlds have been destroyed. The Galactic Council has begged you to stop. You refused. Now we're not asking. We're telling you. End your war. And if we refuse? Koros asked. The railguns on New Jeju's surface adjusted their aim slightly. The orbital platforms locked onto the flagships. The fighters moved into attack positions. The directed energy weapon began powering up again. Then we'll demonstrate what happens when you anger humans, Taeyang said coldly. We've been patient. We've been peaceful. We built a farming colony in neutral space. We grew crops. We sent food to your people. We asked for nothing 2 hours after the 9-minute battle. Commander Velthas and Admiral Koros found themselves in a strange situation. They were enemies who had been trying to kill each other for years. Now they sat in the same room, watching the same holographic display, equally humbled. The room was aboard a human transport shuttle that had docked with both flagships. The interior was simple and functional. No luxury, no decoration. Just clean walls, practical furniture, and advanced technology. The humans had sent repair drones to both fleets, fixing critical life support systems but leaving weapons offline. Taeyang Kim entered the room with Kyungmin, who wore the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. She was in her early 30s, with a confident bearing that came from years of negotiations. Until today, she had posed as the colony's public relations coordinator. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Kyungmin said pleasantly, as if this were a normal diplomatic meeting and not a discussion between victors and the defeated. Velthas's scales rippled with suppressed anger. Did we have a choice? Of course, Taeyang said, sitting down across from them. You could have refused. We would have respected that decision and simply towed your flagships to neutral space. After disabling them completely, Koros added bitterly. After protecting our colony, Taeyang corrected. You brought war to human space. We responded appropriately. Kyungmin activated the holographic display. It showed New Jeju from orbit. But now the overlay displayed what the colony really was. Underground bunkers, power distribution networks, weapon systems, fighter hangars, everything hidden beneath the facade of farmland. New Jeju was never just an agricultural colony, she explained. It's a strategic defense installation, one of several that Earth has established in various sectors of the galaxy. How many others? Velthas demanded. That information is classified, Kyungmin replied with a polite smile. But you can assume that other farming colonies exist in strategic locations throughout known space. Admiral Koros studied the display carefully. His tentacles moved in patterns that suggested deep thought. You've been watching us for 8 years. Everything we did. Every battle we fought. Correct, Taeyang confirmed. Earth doesn't approve of your war. We've been monitoring it since it started. We've cataloged every engagement. Every tactic. Every weapon system you both use. We know your supply chains, your manufacturing capabilities, your military doctrine, everything. The agricultural shipments, Velta said. They weren't just food. Boram Shin entered the room at that moment. She was New Jeju's intelligence analyst, previously known as the colony's supply logistics coordinator. She carried a datapad filled with information. Every shipment we sent contained hidden sensors, Boram explained. Tiny devices embedded in shipping containers. They activated once they reached your space stations and planets. They listened. They watched. They transmitted data back to us through encrypted channels. That's espionage, Koros protested. That's survival, Boram countered. You were fighting a war that was spreading across the galaxy. We needed to know if you would threaten human colonies. So we watched. We learned. We prepared. Kyungmin pulled up new data on the display. It showed detailed schematics of Rexian military installations. Then it switched to Tellurian defensive positions. Then supply routes. Then manufacturing facilities. The amount of information was staggering. We know where every military base is located, she said. We know your fleet compositions. We know your supply timelines. We know which systems are heavily defended and which are vulnerable. We know everything. The room fell silent. Both alien commanders understood what this meant. If humans wanted to, they could cripple both empires. They could strike at key installations with the same precision they'd shown in the 9-minute battle. Both civilizations would collapse within weeks. Why didn't you act sooner? Veltas asked. If you knew we were at war, if you opposed it, why wait until now? Because we hoped you would stop on your own, Taeyang said. Humans prefer peace. We don't want to police the galaxy. We don't want to force other species to follow our rules. We built New Jeju to defend human space, not to interfere in alien conflicts. But you brought that conflict to our doorstep, Kyungmin added. When you decided to fight near New Jeju, you crossed a line. You threatened human lives that we cannot allow. Boram pulled up more data. Do you know how many of your own civilians have died in this war? 371 billion Vrexians, 412 billion Tellurians, countless others from neutral species caught in the crossfire. The numbers appeared on the holographic display. Each death represented as a small point of light. Together they formed a horrifying constellation of loss. We've tracked every casualty, Boram continued quietly. Every destroyed world. Every refugee crisis. Every famine caused by disrupted supply lines. Your war has created suffering on a scale that most species can't comprehend. It's war, Velthas said defensively. People die in war. People die because leaders refuse to negotiate, Taeyang replied. Your species and the Tellurians have more in common than differences. You could have found peace years ago. Instead, you chose pride. You chose revenge. You chose to keep fighting. Admiral Koros's tentacles writhed uncomfortably. The Vrexians attacked our colony worlds first. We had to respond. And before that, the Tellurians were expanding into space, the Vrexians claimed. Belthas countered. We had to defend our territory. And so it escalates, Kyungmin said. Attack and counterattack. Revenge and retaliation. Neither side willing to back down. Meanwhile, billions die. She pulled up another display. This one showed New Jeju's medical facilities. They were far more advanced than any agricultural colony would need. Do you see these? Kyungmin asked. Medical research laboratories. We've been developing treatments for radiation poisoning, for chemical weapons exposure, for biological agents. Do you know why? Neither commander answered. Because we were preparing for the day your war went too far, Yuna Park said, entering the room. She still wore her military uniform, but now she carried medical reports. We've seen the weapons you're developing. Both of you. Bioweapons designed to target specific genetic markers, chemical agents that persist in atmospheres for decades, radiation bombs that render worlds uninhabitable for generations. We would never use such weapons, Koros protested. Yuna placed her datapad on the table. Really? Because our intelligence shows that both empires have stockpiles of these weapons. Both are prepared to use them if the war continues. Both believe the other side will use them first. The silence that followed was heavy. Neither commander could deny it. This is what we want to prevent, Taeyang said. Not just the death of your soldiers, but the extinction of your species. Because that's where this war is heading. Mutual annihilation. Humans have fought wars, Velthus pointed out. Your history is full of conflict. It is, Taeyang agreed. We've made every mistake you're making now. We've fought wars that killed millions. We've developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We've come to the brink of extinction more than once. And we learned, Kyungmin added. We learned that war is easy. Peace is hard. But peace is worth fighting for. That's why we're here. That's why New Jeju exists. Not to conquer, not to dominate, but to protect, to prevent, to preserve life wherever possible. Borum activated a new display. It showed Earth's message to both empires. The message was simple and direct. End your war within 30 days, she read. Begin negotiations under Galactic Council supervision. Agree to binding arbitration. Dismantle your weapons of mass destruction, or we will intervene. You'll invade us? Velthus asked. No, Taeyang said. We'll blockade you. We'll disable every military vessel you launch. We'll intercept every weapon shipment. We'll shut down your ability to wage war without firing a single shot. And we'll keep doing it until you negotiate peace. You can't maintain that forever, Koros argued. We can maintain it longer than you can sustain your war. Kyungmin replied. Your economies are collapsing. Your populations are exhausted. Your resources are depleted. You're both losing this war. The only question is whether you'll lose everything or choose to salvage what you can through peace. The holographic display changed one final time. It showed something that made both commanders lean forward in surprise. It was a recording of the battle, but from angles neither fleet could have seen. It showed the precise coordination of human forces, the perfect timing of each strike, the careful calibration of every weapon. Watch carefully, Taeyang said. This is what restraint looks like. The recording showed moments where human weapons could have destroyed ships but chose not to. It showed fighters that had clear kill shots but disabled engines instead. It showed the railgun strikes that avoided crew sections and hit only weapon systems. We could have killed everyone, Taeyang said quietly. Both fleets. Every ship. Every crew member. It would have taken us less than 5 minutes. Instead, we took 9 minutes to disable you without casualties. Why? Velthus asked. Why show mercy to your enemies? Because you're not our enemies, Taeyang replied. You're just two species making a terrible mistake, and we believe you can do better. Kyungmin stood up. You'll both receive repair drones to fix your ships. 3 months had passed since the 9-minute battle. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody expected. The Vrexian-Tellurian War had ended not with a grand final battle, but with a treaty signing. Both empires agreed to Earth's terms. They dismantled their weapons of mass destruction. They accepted Galactic Council arbitration. They began the slow process of rebuilding what 17 years of war had destroyed. On New Jeju, life had returned to a strange kind of normal. The wheat fields were being harvested again. The orchards produced fruit. The livestock grazed peacefully. But now everyone knew what lay hidden beneath the peaceful surface. Taeyang stood in the same observation deck where he had watched the fleets arrive 3 months ago. He still held his coffee cup. He still wore civilian clothes. But now visiting diplomats and military observers walked through the colony. The secret was out. Another delegation arriving, Yuna said, joining him. She carried her clipboard, though now it listed diplomatic visitors instead of crop yields. 15 species want to send observers to study our agricultural techniques. Agricultural techniques, Taeyang repeated with a slight smile. Is that what they're calling it? It's what we're calling it, officially. Yuna checked her list. Unofficially, they want to know how we hid a military base under their noses for 8 years. Let them wonder, Taeyang said. The galaxy needs some mysteries. Down in the fields, workers continued their daily routines. But now mixed among them were Vrexian engineers and Tellurian technicians. Former enemies learning to work together. Former warriors learning to farm. Hanul approached with a data pad. Monthly security report. We've had 63 requests from various governments asking to purchase human defense systems. Earth Command has denied all of them. Good, Taeyang replied. The last thing the galaxy needs is more weapons. Some species are angry about that, Hanul noted. They say if we have such technology, we should share it. We are sharing it, Yuna pointed out. Just not the weapons. Our agricultural technology is freely available. Our medical research is being distributed. Our educational programs are accepting students from dozens of species. This was the other side of what New Jeju had revealed. While the world had focused on the military capabilities, the colony's actual agricultural innovations were equally impressive. Their crops grew faster. Their yields were higher. Their farming methods were more sustainable. Now colony worlds across the galaxy were implementing human techniques. Jiwan appeared on the deck looking excited. You need to see this. The Galactic Council just broadcast their formal statement about the treaty. She activated a holographic display. It showed the council chamber where representatives from hundreds of species gathered. At the center stood Thexal, a senior council member whose species had witnessed countless wars. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Thexal announced. The Vrexian-Tellurian War has ended not through exhaustion or defeat, but through the intervention of a species we had underestimated. Humanity has shown us that true strength lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to prevent destruction. The council members voted. The holographic display showed the results in real time. By overwhelming majority, humanity was granted a permanent seat on the Galactic Council's Security Committee. We did it, Jiwan whispered. Earth has a voice in galactic affairs now. Whether we wanted it or not, Taeyang said dryly. Earth preferred being underestimated. Too late for that now, Hanul observed. Indeed, everything had changed. The galaxy now knew that human agricultural colonies might be something more, that humans planning for peace also prepared for war, that the quiet farmers tending their fields might be veterans with skills that could end conflicts in minutes. Minho joined them on the deck. The orbital tracking shows 17 new vessels entering the system. Not military. These are merchant ships, what do they want? Taeyang asked. To buy grain, Minho replied. Apparently New Jeju wheat has become quite popular. Word spread about our quality. Or they want to visit the colony that stopped a war, Yuna suggested. Either way, it's good for business. Below in the field, something remarkable was happening. A Vrexian farmer, one of the former soldiers who had chosen to stay and learn, was teaching a Tellurian engineer how to operate a harvester. They worked together, speaking in broken galactic standard, occasionally laughing at misunderstandings. 6 months ago, they would have been trying to kill each other. Now they were growing food together. Kyung-min. Oh walked through the fields, conducting what Earth called agricultural diplomacy. She met with representatives from species interested in implementing human farming methods on their own worlds. She explained techniques. She offered training programs. She built relationships. This is more effective than any weapon, she told Taeyang later. Give species the means to feed themselves better, and they're less likely to fight over resources. That was always the plan, Taeyang agreed. New Jeju was never just about defense. It was about showing the galaxy what humans could offer. In the underground facilities that had once been revealed in the 9-minute battle, things had changed too. The weapons were still there, still maintained, still ready if needed. But now, part of the space had been converted to educational centers. Hanul ran training programs there now. Not combat training, tactical defense theory. Officers from various species learned how to protect without aggression, how to deter without threatening, how to maintain peace through preparation rather than provocation. We're teaching them the hard lessons we learned, Hanul explained to a class of Vrexian and Tellurian officers. War is easy. Peace is hard, but peace is always worth the effort. Daehyun Song had a different role now. His weapon systems were powered down, used only for demonstrations. Instead, he taught precision engineering, how to build systems that could be controlled with perfect accuracy, how to develop technology that served rather than destroyed. Humans didn't invent these weapons to attack others, he told his students. We invented them to defend ourselves. There's a difference. Intent matters. Somin Ryu's engineering teams had become the galaxy's most requested consultants. Her power distribution systems, the irrigation network that had powered New Jeju's defenses, were being studied by dozens of species. The applications for civilian infrastructure were enormous. It's the same technology, she explained. Whether you're powering weapons or cities, the principles are identical. We just chose to build it for defense first. Yuna's medical research had saved countless lives. The treatments she had developed for war casualties now benefited civilians across the galaxy. Burns healed faster. Radiation poisoning could be treated. Chemical exposure could be reversed. We prepared for the worst, she told a medical conference. But we hoped we'd never need these treatments for their intended purpose. Now we're using them to help everyone. Borum Shin's intelligence work had shifted too. Instead of tracking military movements, she now monitored humanitarian needs. Her networks, the same ones that had spied on both empires, now identified regions needing food aid, medical supplies, or technical assistance. Information is power, she said. But how you use that power determines whether you're helping or harming. The revelation about New Jeju had sparked a wave of applications to Earth's colonial service. Young people from dozens of species wanted to learn from humans. They wanted to understand how a society could be simultaneously peaceful and powerful. Earth's response was carefully measured. They accepted students. They shared knowledge. But they also maintained secrecy about other installations. The galaxy now knew that more human colonies existed, hidden among the stars, but nobody knew where they were or how many. Let them wonder, Earth Command had decided. Mystery is a better deterrent than revelation. On New Jeju, the transformation between military and agricultural operations had become seamless. Farmers tended crops that grew above underground bunkers. Shepherds guided livestock across fields that could become launch sites. Everything served dual purposes, practical and peaceful on the surface, protective and powerful beneath. Taeyang watched the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. 3 months ago, this sky had been filled with warships. Now it showed only clouds and the occasional transport shuttle. Do you think the peace will last? Jiwon asked. That depends on whether the Vrexians and Tellurians learned the right lesson, Taeyang replied. If they learned that humans are too strong to fight, the peace will be fragile. But if they learned that cooperation is better than conflict, it might endure. And if they didn't learn, Hanwell asked. Then we teach them again, Taeyang said simply. As many times as necessary. That's what New Jeju is for. A message arrived from Earth. Taeyang read it, then smiled. What is it? Yuna asked. Earth Command is establishing 3 new agricultural colonies, he said. Different sectors, different strategic positions. They're using the New Jeju model. More hidden bases, Hanul observed. More deterrence, Taeyang corrected. More chances to prevent wars before they start. More opportunities to show the galaxy what humans can do. The sun set completely and stars appeared in the sky. Among them, invisible to the naked eye, were the 17 other human colonies that Earth had quietly established. Agricultural settlements, mining operations, research stations. All peaceful, all productive.